Let's understand cross-origin resource sharing in this video. This is also known as CORS. Cross-origin resource sharing controls how a web page requests data from different origin. In other words, it lets the server decide what origins are allowed. Let's first understand what is an origin. Origin is part of a URL of a web page which is sending a request to the server. Origin is made up of protocol, domain, and port. For example, the protocol could be HTTPS or HTTP, and the domain is the domain name of the website, for example, google.com, and the port, usually this will be the port on which the web server is listening. For HTTPS, this will be 443, and for HTTP, this will be 80. In a normal URL, you'll have this, and along with this, you'll also have some additional paths. So the path is not part of the origin. Origin only includes the protocol, domain, and the port. Okay, now we know what an origin is. Let's move on to understand the difference between same origin request and cross-origin request. Let's imagine that we have two different web servers. One is for Google and another one is for Facebook. And each of these web servers will have its own URL. So for Google server, the URL is https google.com. And for Facebook server, the URL is https facebook.com. And these URLs are the mapped URL for these servers. And if you want to load the Google's main page on your browser, you just need to type https google.com and press enter. So the request will be sent to the Google server, and the Google server will send you the response back, and the response will be displayed on the browser. And the same is true for facebook.com as well. If you have a browser instance open and if you type facebook.com and press enter, the request will be sent to the Facebook server and the response will be sent back. In this example, once Google's web page has loaded, if it sends any other request to Google server to get more information, then those are same origin requests, because the page that we have loaded is google.com and we are sending additional requests with the same origin. So in this case, origin is https google.com. And because we are sending more request which has this same origin, meaning the same URL prefix which includes protocol, domain name and port, those requests are same origin request. On the other hand, once the google.com has loaded, if it sends a request to different server, for example, in this case, it sends a request to Facebook server to get some information, then the URL that it is requesting will have Facebook's URL, not the google.com's URL. But the page which is making this request is google.com's web page. So the google.com's URL will be sent as a origin to the server in that case. And because the origin is different from the URL of this particular server, this request is classified as cross-origin request. So just to go back, if you are making a request to Google server from google.com web page, then it is same origin request. But if you are making request to different URL that is not google.com, for example, if you are sending a request to Facebook server from google.com web page, then those requests are cross-origin requests. Okay, so I hope this is clear. Let's now move on to understand what is CORS. CORS or cross-origin resource sharing is a browser feature. Okay, so this is very important point. This is a browser feature and its main goal is to protect users from malicious websites. Okay, so this means a non-browser clients like curl, postman or any server-side scripts will ignore CORS. So any protection that you have for CORS on your server will completely be bypassed by non-browser clients because CORS is browser feature. Okay, now in order to understand how CORS works, we need to understand the two different types of requests because CORS works differently for these two types of requests. Any request that you make from your browser can be classified into two types. One is simple request and another one is non-simple request. So simple request includes things like get, head and post with these content types. If you send a post request with any of these content types, then those requests are classified as simple request. On the other side of the spectrum, we have non-simple requests, and these includes put, delete, patch, and post with application JSON content type, and any request that includes custom header, and any request that includes credentials. For example, if you send a cookie information with a request, then those requests will also be classified as non-simple request. Okay, now we know the difference between simple and non-simple requests. Let's understand how CORS works for simple request first. Let's say we have a browser and we have opened google.com, and this is sending a request to facebook.com behind the scene. So this is our cross-origin server. So the request goes in. Because this is a simple request, the request will go in, and most likely the server will also process that request. Once it has processed that request, it will send the response back, and when it sends the response back, it will include access control allow origin header. And if this header includes the origin of the web page that is currently loaded on the browser, then the response will be processed by the browser. If the access control allow origin does not include the origin of the web page that is currently loaded on the browser, then the response will not be processed by the browser. So the main thing is, request will go to the server will process that request, it will send the response back, and when it sends the response back, it will include this header access control allow origin to indicate all the allowed origins. If the origin of the current page loaded on this particular browser is included in that header, then the response will be processed by the browser. Otherwise, the response will be ignored. It will not be processed by the browser. Okay, so this is very important point. So this is not going to protect your server from processing that request. It is simply going to protect the end users on the browser side by not processing the response which is coming back from the server. This is very important concept, and this is actually source of confusion in many situations. That is why I'm stressing this here. Okay, so that is how it works for the simple request. Let's see how it works for the non-simple request. For non-simple request, if we take the same scenario, we have a browser which has google.com web page loaded, and we have cross-origin server. This could be Facebook server or something else. The first thing the browser does is, rather than sending the request itself, it sends the pre-flight request. So this is done using the options verb, and it sends the pre-flight request, which means the server will respond, and that response will include all these three headers. Okay, so it includes access control allow origin, access control allow methods, access control allow headers. So these are the access control headers which indicates what origins are allowed, what methods are allowed, and what headers are allowed for the requested resource. Okay, so this means the server is not processing the actual request, it only processes the options request that we sent in, and in response it only sends the access control headers. Okay, so these tells the browser what is allowed and what is not allowed. Based on this information, for example, if the access control allow origin includes the origin of the web page that is currently loaded on the browser, then the browser will make the request to the cross origin server because it knows that that request is allowed. But if the access control allow origin does not include the origin of the web page that is currently loaded on the web browser, then the web browser knows that this request is not allowed, so it will not even send the request to the server. It will be blocked on the client side itself. So that is why this pre-flight request is very useful, because if you see the difference between simple and non-simple request, on the simple request, the server may end up processing the request. It's only that the response will not be processed by the browser. But in non-simple request, we won't send the actual request to the server. First, we will send a pre-flight request to understand what requests are allowed. And if the request that the browser is planning to make is allowed based on the response we got for the pre-flight request, then that request will be sent to the cross-origin server. Otherwise, it will be blocked at the browser itself. The request did not even go to the server. Okay, so that is how it works for the non-simple request. Again, to reiterate the goal of CORS or cross-origin resource sharing, CORS is to protect users from malicious website. This is not to protect your web server. This is all about protecting end users from malicious websites. Okay, so if someone is not using a browser client, if they are using some other server-side scripts or Postman or curl like a tool, then they'll still be able to send the request and process the response. But if they are doing the same thing from a browser, then they can't do it. Okay, that is because this is designed to protect the users of the browser from malicious websites. I hope this is clear. That's all for now. Thank you.